So I feel like I've played many, if not all, the roles, worn all the GIS hats, so to speak. Um, so I wanted to kind of bring that experience to talk a little bit about change. So um, I started in the year 2000. I used to work at the New Jersey Office of GIS, right, in Trenton, which is part of the Office of Information Technology. And I worked there as an employee for 5 years. And then went on to do other things, went to do consulting with Civil Solutions and Michael Baker, and worked for the Nature Conservancy building a global data sharing network, which was really cool. And then went to work for Esri for several years as a solution architect. And they sent me around the world looking at big GIS enterprise deployments, helping them use GIS effectively to meet their goals and needs. So, through that experience, all those experiences, I've got to see how GIS is deployed in different organizations, big and small, around the world. It's been really fascinating. And then in 2017, I got tired of it. I wanted to change. I got tired of the travel, and long story short, I rejoined the New Jersey Office of GIS in 2017, and I've been there ever since. From the very beginning to now, that's about 20 years. The office is just over 20 years old. So we're all familiar with this quote, right? The only constant in life is change. And we often think about this in context of, philosophy or one's personal life. But I wanted to look at it in how an organization deals with change over time, right? So an organization like ours, and the work that we all do here, we have to deal with a lot of change. Technology changes so fast, for example, right? And that's a great thing because it allows us to do, more and better solutions, but it's also very fast and rapid, lots of change. Over 2 decades, staffing changes. We're a government office, so policies change, and those are somewhat influenced by political change as well. Growth over time in the office, funding opportunities change as well. So all kinds of change. And since I was there, just when the office was founded, and am now back today, I have that 2 decades perspective of how that change has happened. So that's what I want to talk about. I wanted to share with you how our organization has responded to these pressures of change. We're still here. We're still doing it. We're doing it better than ever, but it's hard. We've had to deal with challenges. So I wanted to share some of that with you guys, and maybe you'll take an idea or two back to your work, to your shop, that'll help you, do your jobs better. So a little bit about the New Jersey Office of GIS, or NJOGIS, right? So we're actually part of the Office of Information Technology for the state of New Jersey, right? So the Geographic Information Officer, Andy Rowan, who many of you know, is the director of our office. And then we have like another 15 folks on our staff. So this is great for us. This is more staff than we've ever had. And everybody's busy doing work. So, our role in a nutshell is to really support effective use of GIS in New Jersey state government. And also our partners, right? So we're a state agency, we're part of a state agency, but we also focus on local government and coordinating with federal government and nonprofits and vendors and consultants and academia, right? Because we all know that GIS just doesn't live in a vacuum, especially when it comes to data sharing. And speaking of data, we are stewards for a lot of really big data sets for the state of New Jersey. We don't necessarily create them all, but we kind of act as stewards for statewide parcels for the state of New Jersey, for example, 3 million of those. That's a lot of polygons, a lot of attributes. We've got 11 different orthoimagery flights that we steward and share out as services. That's 6.2 terabytes of just raw imagery data that we house, and we're in the process of moving up to a cloud hosting solution. Elevation data also, we corral that for the state that's been collected over the years, over 5 terabytes of elevation data, with the growth of LiDAR over the last recent years. That just gets better and better. And we act as a point person with our partners on that. Address points, real important with NextGen. We'll talk a little bit about that. Roads, we corral that for the state of New Jersey. We're the stewards for jurisdictional boundaries. The boundaries between municipalities and counties in New Jersey. All these enterprise statewide data sets. And we even help some agencies who don't have GIS capacity to keep data up to date for, like, where are the schools and the hospitals and what's the authoritative layer for nursing homes in New Jersey. That's one we're working on right now. Is real important with the with the pandemic on and how that ripped through nursing homes initially. So we do a lot of data work, and we use map services to make that data available in applications, or just publish it out for folks so that they can get to it over the internet and consume it or extract data out of it. We also do applications. These are pretty much web applications. We have about 15 that we steward right now of different ages, some brand new, some many, many years old, and I'll talk about that. A couple examples, we have a parcel finder application that uses that parcel data I mentioned, and we're working on a second generation of that. We've got apps that support economic development in New Jersey. We even have an app working with Military and Veterans Affairs that allows viewing of facilities at armories across the state. So just a few examples. So like 15 apps. We also support data sharing and discovery through the New Jersey Geographic Information Network. There's an actual website, the NJOGIS website that some of you might know, engine.nj.gov. And this is a kind of an innovative federated data sharing framework, right? Which I'll talk about, but we got single line search to find data. There's about 500 authoritative data sets available there. Some are from us. All of DEP's, super valuable data is there. But we push really hard to try to get data from our local partners, our counties and our towns who have a lot of the authoritative content cataloged and available there as well. So we had a lot of, that gets used. Last month, we counted about 4,300 downloads of data sets from that system, from Engine. Data that's there, you can either download it or consume it as a service, or in many data sets, you have the option of doing either. So that's really powerful. You see it, you find it, it looks good, you can start using it. And then we work with state agencies that are doing GIS or starting to look at GIS for a project and try to make sure, that they're aware of the technology and the data available. So we do a lot today, right? And we've been around a while, and we've worked with a lot of you guys. But back in the year 2000, we were brand new, right? That's a long time ago. So just to level set, think about pop culture back then. The TV show Survivor, you might be familiar with, right? I think it's in its 40th season. It was finishing its first season, the finale where they vote people off the island. That took place in the year 2000. It was like the most heavily watched TV show. Justin Timberlake back then was just another talented guy in a boy band, and NSYNC. They had like the fastest selling album of all time at that point in the year 2000. And we had just come through Y2K, right? Where the world was going to end because computer systems weren't tracking dates properly. Utilities and government organizations, all the computer systems were going to go offline. It was going to be the end of the world, but nothing really happened. So we had just come through that. And this was also the year in politics of the hanging Chad, right? Of Al Gore and George Bush were running for president, and it was really close, and it came down to just folks recounting ballots in Florida. And you might remember people were actually looking at ballots cast and trying to figure out what the ballot tells them and what holes were punched in those punch cards. So that's kind of a long time ago. I remember it. I mean, I'm that old, I remember it. But our office at the time was brand new. So the state of New Jersey had a new CIO, I think the year before I got there. And I believe he came from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and was aware of the good GIS work they did, wanted to start some sort of GIS Center of Excellence at the Office of Information Technology. So he brought the director from DEP over, and then they started building a staff. And then a year later, well, a year after I got there in 2001, the governor created an executive order that actually created our office. So, you know, the governor's executive order said there shall be an Office of GIS, and it's going to focus on coordinating GIS activities. At the time, we had like 5 staff when I joined and a couple of consultants. We were using real bleeding edge technology, trying to get things on the web. We were using Esri's ArcIMS and trying to figure out how web servers worked. Back then, we were using SEE and trying to figure out how we could edit stuff in a relational database using SQL Server, Oracle. We were using Windows NT operating system. All those technologies were new to the industry, but new to the Office of Information Technology that we were in. So we were a brand new office, and we didn't have a strong identity. We definitely hadn't built any credibility yet. You know, we would go meet with folks out in the community, and they would constantly say, so you're from DEP, right? You do GIS for the state, you're DEP, right? And we would have to explain the difference. And even in our own agency, the Office of Information Technology, we were new there, right? These were the folks that were running the mainframes that do the state payroll system and a lot of the back-end systems that run the state website and stuff. And they didn't know GIS, and they didn't know who we were. And here we are with an executive order and engaged to work with our community. So we had to build credibility within our own organization too. And that took a long time. In the early days, that was tough. That was a struggle. So what I wanted to do was use the time that I have to focus on a few areas here: data stewardship, data sharing and discovery, solutions, capacity building, coordination, and community, and then highlight a few challenges, right? And kind of look at, well, how did we do these things in the early 2000s when I first started, and then how do we do them today? And maybe try to tease out some of the issues and lessons to share them with you guys. So let's just dive in with data stewardship, right? I talked about data sets, enterprise data sets that we steward for the state of New Jersey earlier. But back in the early 2000s, we didn't really do much data at all. Most of the statewide data sets were put together by the GIS team at the Department of Environmental Protection, right? So they did jurisdictional boundaries, for example, and they did land use. Parcels didn't exist. There was no parcel composite that covered the whole state. Some counties and cities had parcel layers, but it was a patchwork, right? And many of them were, you know, that those data sets were locked up and used in their systems, and not really easy to share. Roads, you know, New Jersey DOT wasn't following roads yet. We were using Tiger Centerline roads. You know, that was the best that we had. And then a few years later, we were able to get some funding, and we licensed the TeleAtlas roads for state agency use, you know, and that was a real great data set. But that was expensive, and we couldn't maintain that contract forever. And we really wanted a public domain data set that could be used by all, not just, you know, bound by our licensing agreement. Site addresses in the early 2000s just didn't exist, just wasn't something that had been tackled yet. There was lots of orthophotography, however. You know, the folks at DEP had started doing periodic flights in the 90s. So we had a good tradition of that, and we started working with them and other partners to carry that forward. And we're doing that now, as I think Justin alluded to on an earlier presentation. The 2020 flight just concluded, and that data is being processed. So we have a rich tradition of that from the very beginning. Jurisdictional boundaries, that's one of our hot data sets now. We still tweak it. We just finished a project recently of aligning the boundaries between New York and Pennsylvania. You know, especially with Pennsylvania, the borders a river, and the river banks shift over time, so you have to adjust your boundaries. And then of course I mentioned elevation. We have a lot of it today. We have QL2 data today for the whole state. That last South Jersey project is going to be delivered soon. But back then we really didn't have anything. Whatever we had was really, really coarse and not that useful at a large scale. But today, we've grown into a significant data shop. The projects that I mentioned, about half of our staff is involved in maintaining data at any given time on different data projects. We really strive to have the best quality data, and that doesn't mean that we create it usually. We usually aggregate it from the community, from you guys, and put it together and do QA, QC and document it and share it. We have to do that for parcels. We have to do that for roads. And we're working on doing that for address points. Local government in those cases are the authoritative source. So, as our capacity grew, we were able to make more data available. I think New Jersey's really fortunate on a national perspective. We've got a lot of these data sets available for our whole state. Maybe being such a small geography is nice for once. So let's do another topic here. Data sharing and discovery, right? So that executive order that I mentioned from 2001 from the governor, that charged us with creating a GIS clearinghouse website to share GIS data freely for anybody who wants it. So that quickly became the New Jersey Spatial Data Clearinghouse website. We were able to stand that up in 2000. By today's standards, it was crude, but then it was cutting edge. It was using some intergraph technology. Most of the data in there was from DEP, and it was kind of a catalog of metadata records that people could search. But we felt it was important to meet that challenge and get that stood up. Back then, this was really a catalog, and the federal government had some search websites that could do live searches across other states. Well, they really wanted to search all the states, including our catalog, and this technology supported that. That was slow and worked okay, but it was pretty innovative at the time. So we did that for a few years. And then we wanted to do something better. Technology was changing. Map services became a thing, web services, internet. So we wanted to move beyond just that clearinghouse into what we call Engine Explorer, which was released in like 2003. And that was using Esri's ArcIMS metadata server technology. I did a lot of work on that back in the day. And that was, that supported map services, which was neat because you could search and it would search the metadata catalog, like the catalog of metadata records. And if that particular data set had a map service, it would give you a link to it so you could actually, try to use it in an application. So that was great. In the beginning, it was very innovative. We actually ran it for about 15 years until last year. Towards the end there, it was tough to get metadata records into it, we have to admit. Usually only big shops like ours or DEP folks that were writing metadata could write metadata records that would get ingested properly. The system would reject it if you didn't do it absolutely perfectly. So it was hard for most of the community to submit metadata to it. So we wanted something that was more modern and easier for data stewards to contribute data to, because if there's nothing in your data catalog to search and discover, what's the point? Why have it? So last year, about a year ago this time, we released Engine 3.0. That's our version number at engine.nj.gov. And this is a modern federated search framework, right? It's based on ArcGIS Online technology. And the cool thing is that it allows folks who have data that they want to share to publish it using their ArcGIS Online org. And we can see it and we add it to our search catalog, and then it's available. And those publishers control what gets published, when it gets published, If you need to take it down or make updates, they have full control of that. We just kind of look at it and wire it up to the engine site. Metadata is required, of course. That's gotten easier a little bit. The tools have gotten better. And we've even taken the FGDC standard and created an abbreviated standard for New Jersey called Engine Core to try to make it easier for folks. There's like a dozen elements in there. So there's just less that you have to write. It's the most important things that we need. So we've been doing that from the very beginning, and that's evolved as technology evolved. Crazy to me that Engine Explorer lived for so long, because I was really involved in building it, and then I came back and I was really involved in replacing it. So that was kind of fun. Let's keep moving and look at solutions. Right, in the past, we used to build a lot of custom web applications. You know, when somebody needed to use GIS, a state agency, we would often build them a custom web app. And in the early 2000s, that's kind of all you could do. APIs were available, but you had to write code and kind of develop some software. So we built a lot of apps that way, but it takes a lot of effort, you know, and it takes time and expertise and skill to do that right and have the app work. And today we've kind of switched gears where we don't really do much custom development anymore. There's actually an executive order 225 from the governor, the Christie administration, that moved application development responsibilities out of the Office of Information Technology. So technically, we're not even really allowed to do custom application development. But as the industry has changed, so have we changed, in that we've moved from everything's got to be custom built to 100% of the customer specifications to a commercial off-the-shelf configurable approach, right? Taking application templates or builders and applying them to the business need that we have at hand. You know, Justin showed some of the COVID-19 templates that Esri has. It's that concept. Take something like that, adapt it to your needs, and it allows you to create solutions, get them deployed very rapidly, and iterate quickly, right? You can do a quick version and try it out, get some feedback, and then tweak it based on the feedback and release a new version. And that can happen very quickly. I mean, we're doing that in some cases in weeks, in some cases on a recent project within days based on feedback. So it allows us to be very, very productive and iterative. And the old 80-20 rule is really helpful here because it allows us, you get 80% of the benefit from 20% of the effort. Really try to keep that in mind so that we don't try to get 100% of the benefit. That last 20% takes forever. And the other thing that we think about is sustainability, right? Once you stand up an app, how do we keep this going long term? Some of our apps live many, many years, right? So we need to be thoughtful of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So today, when an agency approaches us and they have a GIS need, we don't jump to swoop in and build an application immediately. We act more as a consultative mode and provide them guidance of how they can get their project done. And often that's giving them some advice. And then if they need work that's beyond their abilities, we do have the GIS services contract in New Jersey where we've got, pre-vetted firms that can do data work, that can do custom development, that can help you out with project planning and assessment and such. So, if an agency has some money that they can put towards their project, some skin in the game, they can get some help to make their project happen. So that's really great. Like I said, we've got about 15 web apps. The challenge for us is that legacy applications, older ones, they get very difficult for us to ever retire them. It's kind of a phenomenon of government in that we build an application for a state agency. It's used heavily for the first couple of years, and then the usage fades. But the business owner agency won't let us take it down because somebody uses it once in a while. And they're not paying us anything. There's no support contract. It's government to government. So we're stuck maintaining apps for a long, long time until we can get the official word to take it down. So that's a struggle for us. So let's look at another concept here, coordination and community. You know, we were charged from that executive order to help coordinate GIS across state at all levels. And even before our office, the State Mapping Advisory Committee was the only body that was really trying to do this, and DEP was doing a great job making that work. And the executive order created the Geographic Information Council to supersede that, which had a group of folks, around a dozen or so, that were appointed by the governor. And it was an interesting idea. It didn't really work very well. It got political fast and wasn't that effective. So the whole community realized we needed to do something different, and we created the New Jersey Geospatial Forum. So our office supports that. That's a group that meets quarterly. It's open to anybody who's interested in GIS in New Jersey. There are public meetings. There's an executive committee of folks elected by members of the forum, from members of the forum. And then we use task forces to dive into specific issues that we want to learn more about, or do a deep dive research project on. Some other things we do to coordinate. We have a roundtable for state GIS coordinators and state agencies where we get together, maybe it's every other month or so, and just kind of share about what's going on with GIS in our agency. And then of course we liaise with federal government, right? I've been working with FEMA a lot. Our liaison Julia there has been really great, and USGS with Roger, and FGDC, and heavily involved with NJOGIS, which is its own organization, but helps us learn from what other states are doing. And Andy is a past president of NJOGIS, so we've been heavily involved there. I've been to some meetings. A couple other folks in our office have been to some of those meetings. So I feel like we've been doing coordination pretty steadily. Some early hiccups there, but the forum is a vibrant and thriving organization, and we're happy to help support it. So let's look at one of the other things that we're charged with is capacity building, growing the use of GIS at state agencies and also across the state as a whole, right? So how did we do that in the early 2000s? Like I said, for specific projects that agencies would come to us about, we would usually say, hey, let's build a web app that, shows you where all the state-owned properties are in New Jersey. And we would work really hard and build this custom tool, and it would be great. But what we did have this interesting, innovative project where we wanted to make it easy for those local government data owners, the counties and the cities that owned parcel data for their jurisdiction, and local zoning information, and knew where the updated roads were in their jurisdiction, to share that on the internet so that everybody could benefit from it. And back then, that was a lot of technology. It was very difficult to do, but we were able to get funding to seed counties and cities that would partner with us and give them a bunch of technology and service to help them get their data published and online. Now, this was the early 2000s. This program was called the New Jersey Mapping Assistance Partnership Program, NJMAP. And, a county would partner with us, and the state would pay for and deliver, some Dell hardware, like 3 servers, server-class servers from Dell, a bunch of Esri software, ArcIMS and ArcSDE and SQL Server and Windows licensing for operating system. And this was, and deploy that to the county, and the county would have to agree to serve their data up free and open and document it with metadata. That's where a lot of those early metadata records came for Engine Explorer. It was from this program. And it was cool for me because my job at the time was to go to those counties and cities and stand up the technology and work with the local GIS folks there. And I got to meet a lot of folks. That was really fun. And that was a great program. We had, there's 21 counties, in New Jersey. At the time, we had almost half of them involved for the life of that program. And that was limited by budget, though. That was before the dot-com bubble burst, if anybody can remember that. And then the funding dried up. And we weren't able to expand the program. And the locals had to take over maintenance costs of the system that the state gave to them. That was part of the deal. So that was great. That seeded the sharing and transparency of publishing data at that time. So how do we do capacity building now? Kind of like I talked about with solutions, we act in a consultative fashion where we'll meet with folks, talk about their project, and give them guidance on how it might work, and we can act as coordinators and help facilitate their project. But we often stop short of just doing it for them because we can't scale that way. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes my boss Doug has to rein me in when there's a cool project and I want to do it because it's cool, but it's like, we don't really. Everybody's busy. We can't get that done properly, and it's just not a right fit. So then we give them some advice on how they might get their project done, and we want to make them aware of resources that are available. That contract that we talked about, all the rich data that's available openly now in New Jersey that groups can use in their solutions, and like I talked about with the Engine 3 website, the sharing and discovery site, we will help folks who want to get their content registered there, but maybe aren't sure how to do it, or can't make the time. Heck, if they even need help writing metadata, we'll help them do that. Well, if you're not sure how RTS Online works, but you have it because you're an Esri customer, then we'll help you use that. So we're really invested in helping to grow that data catalog of about 500 New Jersey data sets. And then we do run a big GIS hosting environment at our shop. So if there's a good fit, we'll host map services for folks. But these days we don't have to do that very much. So I wanted to highlight some of the challenges that we have, that we've experienced in all these different areas, right? Things that we have to rise to the challenge to try to overcome, with varying degrees of success on our side, but maybe you can learn from our lessons. Legacy solutions or applications. I talked about this quite a bit of, we may have an application that was custom built web app doing some cool GIS, and it was built 8 years ago, still running. We can't get it taken down, right? Because the agency that owns it won't let us because they might use it. And it was custom built using technology that's out of support. And the developer from our staff who built it, at the time was a very capable, smart person, built it. Then maybe she left and moved on and went to the private sector, getting a better salary package and left us some documentation, but now we have this custom built app that we have to support, and we can't really change code. That's really difficult to do, and we can't take it down. So we just kind of have to keep it running until we can get the business owner to take it down. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't want to take it down if it's being used. That's fine. We're happy there. But some of these older apps are used very, very little, and we still have to keep them up there, and it takes a lot of effort and time. So another thing to think about is, we work with a lot of agencies that need GIS to solve a problem, and managing their expectations is a big challenge, but super important up front, right? A lot of them will just come in and they're like, hey, I just need a map that shows me this or that. I just want my stuff on the map. And it's easy to them. But for us, we're thinking about, well, where's that data come from? How does your data get updated? What's the availability of the application need to be? And it quickly, becomes more than I just need a simple map. It's a project. And sometimes they shy away when they realize, that they have to do some long-term data management on their end. But it's real important to have that discussion up front, because otherwise you get an app stood up with stale data. And as technology evolves, we have to evolve with it, right? The skills of our staff have to constantly keep up. And this is a challenge, right? For staff that have been there a while, like me, you constantly have to upgrade your skills. New folks that come into our office, you know, we might have to bring them up to speed on certain technologies that they don't have. And then, of course, operation procedures around solutions need to be flexible as well. So our organization is really good at setting up operational procedures to keep apps running and keep things working. And when technology changes, those procedures have to change as well. Sometimes that's a lot of effort behind the scenes. It's not always seen. So that's some of the challenges. I want to wrap up with a few summary things for you guys to keep in mind. You know, as you're doing your work and you're thinking about how GIS can help your organization, think big and small. You know, go for those big things. How does this particular project fit into my big picture of how GIS can work for my organization, right? But also think small, like go help those groups that need something that seems simple to you, but is super valuable to them. Right, like go talk to those inspectors that are doing everything on paper, like we saw this morning. Like that's a great way to provide some value there. But keep your core competencies in mind, right? What can you do? What can you actually get done? You know, if you drift too far out of it, you kind of got to reevaluate what you're doing. And you know, that 80-20 rule we talked about, doing a little cost benefit analysis in your head. Is this project that I take on going to provide enough value that it's worth the effort that we're going to have to put into it? Sometimes that's a hard thing to think about. Document stuff, right? I know you guys all do your metadata. That's great, but we'll help you if you're in New Jersey and you need it. And go out and seek those opportunities to do good, right? Go talk to folks. Go talk to people in your organization where you think GIS can help. Participate, you know, learn from others, not just in organizations like MAC, URISA, or in New Jersey, the Geospatial Forum, but go get involved with user groups in your organization so you can hear how people do their work and how you might be able to help them, right? And I'll just end with the last thought of the change is going to happen, right? It's going to happen to your organization no matter what. And the challenge is, you know, how are you going to respond to it? So I'm going to end right there, and I have like a minute for questions. So Justin, if you're still
here, that was great, Brian. Thanks for the presentation. That was a nice look at kind of the history of the organization and, you know, some of the things that you've kind of seen in your experience over the years. And I like the summary as well, right? Think about how to drive value in other organizations, how to expand the use of GIS, and just meeting with folks, understanding what they need, and provide those opportunities. So I did open up the chat. If there's any questions, please post them there, and we'll answer them.
So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yep, that's fine.
So I see a question.
Yeah, from Jason.
Right, from Jason. 2020 ortho is only going to be Mr. Sid downloads. No, they will be available for download. I don't know that we can speak to the format yet. One thing we've been looking at using are cloud optimized GeoTIFFs, because they support streaming from a web server, which is pretty cool. It's a little too early to say though exactly what formats we'll use. And there will be a web service for it. So all of our current imagery is available as services, and you can find them listed at the engine.nj.gov website.
All right, excellent.
Any other questions? All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah, I don't see any others unless you see some directly, you know, message to you. I do see one. When will the 2020 aerials be?
Haha, great question. So we just, it's going to take some time. We just got an email on this morning. The delivery to, I think, DEP will be a year from now. And then it's going to take some time to make it available to all you guys. So I know that sounds long, but there's a really big QA/QC effort that goes into it to make sure that data is really high quality, because it's not just, you know, an image base map. There's a lot of data development that happens off of that imagery. So our quality specifications are really stringent. So, you know, yeah, the flight's captured. It's great. It's going, but please be patient while that happens.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.